I'm going to tell you a story. Not sure if I'm going to publish this, but I have to tell the story because I have to become comfortable with telling the story. And most people won't listen. Most people who do listen probably won't believe it because I didn't believe it either. But you have to become your authentic self. No matter what, you have to keep going to become your authentic self. And you won't always understand what that is, but that's why I'm going to tell you the story. And I had to. I just finished working on a document. And it's called the compiling all of this information that I receive through Wilhelm that didn't make sense. And it's called the Grand Cosmic Design because we're going to find out that we all have a design. We all are supposed to be here for a reason, and that's what Wilhelm was revealing. Let's start in 2020. First of all, for those of you who don't know, I started receiving Wilhelm in 1989, so that's how long ago. But for 19, almost 20 years, no one would have seen it because I wasn't going to publish it or put it out there. It only got out there because other people found it. So I was always running from it. So I'm not going to do this. And so it kept going like that. And then my life, I am going through things and healing and understanding things and going through tragedies and everything imaginable. And I'm healing and I'm still doing this work and not telling anyone. And then in 2020, my life changed because I was still publishing. I would put them out because that's what I always did all those years. And I also felt like I had to get them out there because people were waiting for them. That was the other thing that kept me accountable, that's for sure. But I didn't think anything of it. Then in 2020, the messages started changing because I started getting this term restructuring. I go, what? And then they said it's going to take place in the United States, and I didn't understand what that meant. And they were so uncomfortable for me because uh, they felt like doom and gloom. And I said, no, it's going to be okay. And they kept telling me, but I couldn't write them. I would sit there for the longest time because I hear everything very clearly, and but then I'll hesitate. No, you do it too. And so many things we think about it, and then we hesitate, and I didn't want to write it. And but then I would be shaken out of that, literally shaken out of that, and so I would write. But I couldn't edit them. And that's pointed out in many of the messages, and you might have seen that. They would say, please don't censor, because that's what we do. We hear ourselves and then we start to censor. And that's what I was doing. I did it quite a bit because if I could censor it, I wouldn't have to act on it or I wouldn't have to believe it. So then in 2021, when I hear we've given you everything you needed to know in 2012, that was the most that made no sense at all. I said, that's not even possible. Then I come in to my home and I find a folder that says Wilhelm, and I open it. It's all these messages from 2012. I, that didn't make sense. So why didn't I know? I thought it was from an assistant or something like that. And I didn't think much more about it. But then they also said, yeah, we gave you everything because we've given you a philosophy. And they said, it's called your life operating instructions. And I go, why? And they said, because your world's going to be going through a big change, and all of you are going to be going through some really difficult times in your lives, really revealing everything in your lives and in your world. And it's going to happen mainly in the United States, which I didn't understand why that kept coming through. They said the United States would lead the way. Okay. Said, I'll find out later because they said, yeah, you just got to wait because you won't understand it and then you won't accept it. And so I said, okay, I'll wait. And so they said, we give you information in increments because we don't believe things. And that's why we have to use, cognitive behavior training and neuroscience and understanding it and doing all the NLP or whatever it is that we have to do to change something because we're resistant. We're resistant to change. And irony is change is the only way we get anything that we want. But I didn't want to change. And I could see every step of the way I was resistant to all of it, even a car accident, which I knew was a signal to make a change. I'm not going to do it because I can't tell people what I'm doing. I can't tell them what I know. Then I started experiencing all these mind body healing things that I were just out of this world. There were things that were said to be incurable, and I keep looking on the internet to see have they found a cure yet? And said no. Well, I cured it, so I know that it's possible, and that kept happening. I go, how's that happening? So then I got pushed in 2021. They said, we've given you everything, and now you need to work with it. Work with people, give it to them. They're going to want this going through this transition. And I did. I put people in this program, and they changed so quickly, and it freaked me out. This is documented. I'm being completely honest, but it freaked me out because how did they do that? It was from the information, and they didn't do that much. They did 31 days of a program, and they were transformed in a sense. I mean, we don't get transformed completely, but they had a new way of looking at themselves and they could carry that on. Now, but it was also meant to go on so much longer, but I fell off the job, but as it were, because I was freaked out because I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand why it was happening. And we can do that a lot. We won't believe certain things. And even in the channeling sessions, Wilhelm would point out to me how I couldn't believe stuff. They would say things all the time. We've given you everything. You could heal yourself and the world. And I said, that's not possible. Then they told us everything that was going to go on, all the events that were going to happen, everything that was going to come about, even today. Last year, for a while, they told me, just look at the information we gave you last year on a certain date. We'll be really consistent. And last year on this date, they gave a message that said, you have reached another fork in the road. That was for all of us. And then tomorrow's says something that says the same thing. How we would start to understand things. We will understand ourselves and our lives and our world a little bit better. That wasn't really the message. It came out a little bit differently. But the point is, I could see the progression which they wanted us to understand. We progress in our consciousness over time, over linear time, and that's what we do, how we evolve as individuals and also as a civilization. Sometimes we don't get it right, and sometimes we don't do it. And then we go back and we keep making the same mistakes, which is the same thing that Wilhelm said. They said, you don't study your history. If you did, you wouldn't keep doing the same things. That okay. So I started seeing it all. And then they pointed out to me, and I just read this in one of the messages. They said, Roger still couldn't believe it, even though he's seeing the things show up in your world that we told him. And that was true. And I thought, well, nobody's going to believe this. And they told me that would happen as well. And that was true. I said, but it's healed everything, every aspect. And then I started seeing, I didn't even understand what I had done. 36 years of doing this. And then I went to the website and I'm starting to look for answers to things because the only difficulty we have is something in our consciousness, is something that we can't figure out, that we can't see a different direction or change our perception. And that's why we do mindset work. I've done it all. It's all in there. All I have to do is organize it and give it to people and it changes them. But it wasn't me. And that's the part that I had to accept. And I had to get others to understand this as well, not get them, but I just wanted them to understand because we have so much more capability as humans if we could let go of our biases and restrictions. I've never studied astrology or anything like that, and I come to understand now that Wilhelm was giving me information that was astrologically aligned, and that alignment was what was causing me and others to heal because it's all energy. And so if you're coming into alignment with who we are, the natural result would be healing. And then we have generational trauma. Well, they said you don't look at it. So they said the reason that this philosophy works is that it addresses the things that as a society and individuals we ignore. Mainly, they said racism and misogyny. They had me go back first. I had to go back and look at that in my life. I wrote an article back in 2016 to say, wow, I didn't know that was there. Well, most people don't know that they are racist and may have misogynistic tendencies because it's been programmed, it's been taught to us, and it's in our collective consciousness. And so it had to be there, but most times we don't want to look at it. And that's why they said this material worked so well and why we got clear and got a higher state of consciousness because we were willing to do the shadow work, willing to look at what existed in our lineage because we carry that with us. And then if we get rid of that, we let go of it, then we can find the real thing we're here to do that, and put out the energy of love and joy within ourselves and into our families and out into the world. And that would be the world. But they said the only difficulty would be we wouldn't believe we could do it. That would come up so many times. They would say utopia is attainable. And I said, yeah, I know that, but why won't people believe it? They said they have biases. They would they always point out, and I'm going to give you another example because you'll see this, you'll understand it because I love the example, and this came through in the channeling session. They took me back to remembering Roger Maris. I mean, not Roger, Roger Bannister. And so, and that was, and I go, that was bizarre, but Roger Bannister was the first guy to run a sub 4 minute mile. And see, what that meant is after people saw it was done, then they could do it. And they said that would be the same thing with this work, but I'm going to suffer a little bit first because people won't believe it for a while. But now I believe it because I just saw all of this documentation and now I understand it. And the reason I couldn't believe it because no one's done it. I was receiving information from the quantum field. That's why the dates are all in sync and aligned. And that's never been done. There's never been a documented development, spiritual or philosophical development that has ever come about in that way. And then it's also a little difficult because it works. And that's difficult for people to accept. I just have to say it because it was difficult for me to accept. But now I must do it. I'm going to complete it and I'm going to do it. And the people who are doing it already know it. And I'm going to complete this for them as well and for everyone else who want it. But I just had to record this as I'm going to put that out tomorrow. We are not limited. We just have biases and limitations that are ingrained and programmed, and we can change them. And that's what this work has done for me. And that's why I keep talking about my age, because I'll be 75 November 2nd. And I'm like, this is really bizarre. You could do the same thing. And if I could just get, allow more people to know and see and do it, we'd have a very different world. Enjoy the document. See you soon.